Hello everyone, how are you doing today? Good evening or good morning wherever you are in the world. I'm Suloshini and for today I'm going to be moderating the Read for Pixels Google Hangout session for the Pixel project. Through Read for Pixels, the Pixel project is collaborating with award-winning best-selling authors to raise awareness about violence against women and to raise funds for the celebrity male role model Pixel Reveal campaign, which aims to raise 1 million to be shared between the USA's National Coalition Against Domestic Violence and the Pixel Project to keep their efforts to end violence against women alive and kicking. We'll be telling you more about the Read for Pixels fundraiser, which has lots of exclusive author goodies a little later in the session. And you can also find out more about the Pixel Project. You just have to visit www.pixelproject.net. Today, for our session, we have a very special guest, a live discussion and Q&A session by New York Times best-selling author Alexandra Monir of the Timeless series. Alexandra broke onto the scene in her early 20s with the release of a popular debut YA novel, paranormal romance Timeless, in 2011, which happened to land on the Barnes & Noble's bestsellers chart and was also named as one of Amazon's best books of the month. The follow-up to that, Timekeeper, was published in 2013. Alexandra also followed that series up with a short e-novella, The Secrets of the Time Society, and has very recently released, in December, her latest book, Suspicion. She's also a singer-songwriter and has been known for integrating music into her book's pages. She wrote and recorded 3 original songs, Timeless and Timekeeper, which were released as the album The Timeless EP and distributed by Jimmy Buffett's record label, Mailboat Records. Additionally, she recorded a new song to be released along with Suspicion and is composing a stage musical geared towards Broadway. She's also very generously donated some fabulous goodies for the Read for Pixels campaign, such as 2 Timeless Readers Packs, which comprises of her critically acclaimed Timeless duology comprising 1 personalized copy of Timeless, which is a paperback edition, and 1 personalized copy of Timekeeper, which is a first edition hardcover. So if you have fascination with time travel, this is right up your alley. She's also donated 2 signed first edition hardcover copies of her latest book, Suspicion. And if you're dying to pick her brain a little bit, she's donated a 1-to-1 Skype chat with 1 lucky fan or book club. So check out Alexandra's and other authors' goodies that we have up as perks on the Indiegogo fundraising page. Please give generously, as all funds go towards the Pixel Project's celebrity male role model Pixel Reveal campaign to help end violence against women. So without further ado, I'm going to show you the woman of the hour, Alexandra. Hi, Alexandra. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so grateful that you have taken the of your very busy schedule and also recovering from a sore throat to be here today. And yeah, we know that you said you're going to be reading chapter 6 of Suspicion, so maybe we'll take you right into that, and you can give us a little bit of an introduction on what Suspicion's all about, and we'll take it from there.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me. I am such a believer in the work that you do and the Pixel Project and Read for Pixels. So I'm just so glad to be part of it. So thank you. Suspicion is my newest book. I'll show you the cover. You can see it. There it is.
Oh, that's lovely.
And Suspicion is a Gothic mystery in the grand tradition of Daphne du Maurier. That's who I was inspired by. The book is very much a retelling of Rebecca. And the story follows 17-year-old Imogen Rockford, who is the granddaughter of the 5th Duke of Wickersham in this fictional town I created in Oxfordshire. But even though she comes from these noble roots across the pond, when we meet her in the first act of the book, we find her hiding out in New York, where she's been since this horrific tragedy happened 7 years ago. But as our story kicks off the night before her high school graduation, she receives a letter that gives her no choice but to return back to Rockford Manor, back to that childhood home in Oxfordshire that has haunted her dreams. It's the scene of her childhood, both pain and also some of her happiest memories before the tragedy. So where I'm going to be reading from is right when she's returned to Rockford Manor. She's now inherited the title, and she's suddenly a 17-year-old duchess, and she's coming face to face with these figures from her past.
Yeah.
So, if anyone has the book with them, I am reading from page 110.
All right.
Are you ready for this, Your Grace? May I roll down the windows? I suck in my breath at the sight of hundreds of strangers crowded together outside the black iron gates of Rockford Manor. They wave flowers and Union Jack flags and hold up banners reading, "Welcome our Imogen, Duchess of Wickersham," and "Long live the Duchess." This is all for me? I ask. Rhetorical question, I know, but I've never been made such a fuss over in my entire life, and it has me a little dumbfounded. It sure is. The driver, Alfie, meets my eyes in the rearview mirror. Ready to greet your public? As ready as I'll ever be. Alfie rolls down all four windows, and a deafening cheer erupts. I smile shyly at the men and women flourishing their banners, and I wave to the children jumping up and down alongside the car. Those are your townspeople and tenants, Alfie tells me. On occasions like weddings, or a new duke or duchess stepping into the title, they gather for a formal welcome to pay their respects. It's tradition. It's really sweet, I remark, a blush still reddening my cheeks. After a chaotic few minutes, Alfie presses a button next to the steering wheel, and the manor's gates open on cue. The cheers reach a fever pitch as we pull through the entrance, not quieting until the car passes the crowd. Now it's just me and Alfie again. I peer ahead nervously, my eyes automatically searching for the shadow garden and the maze, even though they're both the last places I want to see. I quickly remember they're both tucked behind the estate, hidden from my current view, and I breathe a sigh of relief. A lump rises in my throat as the car sweeps past my favorite childhood surroundings, the lake, the grassy parkland, and of course, the childlike manor, the castle-like manor itself. Everything looks the same as when I was here all those years ago, and for a moment it seems impossible that I won't find my parents or relatives inside. Alfie drives forward into the great courtyard, and I feel a rush of emotion at the sight of the dozen figures waiting for me on the front steps, just like when I was little. As Alfie slows to a stop, a tall, slim young man in a black suit rushes to open my door, while his nearly identical counterpart hurries to the trunk to retrieve my suitcases. Footman, I remember. "Good afternoon, Your Grace," the footman says, dropping to a bow before helping me out of the car. "Thank you. It's nice to meet you, Mr. Carter, Your Grace. The pleasure is all mine." This Your Grace stuff is starting to feel pretty silly. I wonder how long it'll take for everyone to feel comfortable just calling me Imogen. The staff remains lined up in perfect form, and for a moment I'm at a loss as to what I'm supposed to do. Are they waiting for me to call out "at ease" or something? But as I approach the front steps, a familiar figure hurries down toward me, his eyes shining as he lowers into a bow. "Your Grace," he says softly. My, has it been a long time. I'm speechless as I look at Oscar. He has changed from the dapper butler I remembered into someone who looks 20 years older and troubled. He's grown bald, his face is creased with countless lines, and his eyes have lost their sparkle. It occurs to me now that Oscar is a visual representation of the tragedies that have befallen Rockford Manor. It must have nearly killed him to stand by as he lost the family that he cared for so deeply, and once again I'm overcome with a heart-wrenching sense of regret. "Oscar," I whisper, "it's so good to see you." "And you as well, Your Grace. I often wondered when I would see you again." His eyes fill with emotion. "You've grown into such a beautiful young woman, just like your mother." I can feel the tears pricking at the back of my eyes, and I throw my arms around him, like I used to as a little girl. His scent reminds me of my father, a subtle English cologne mixed with the woodsy smell of Rockford Manor, and I hold on tighter before finally letting him go. "Sorry," I say with a half smile. "I just missed you." "I missed you too, Your Grace," he says warmly. "Allow me to reacquaint you with the staff." We turn around to face the steps, where 11 pairs of eyes watch us intently. You of course know Harry, Oscar says, nodding to the estate agent Harry Morgan, who steps forward and bows with a broad smile. Wonderful to see you on home turf, Your Grace. You too, Harry, I grin back at him. Thanks for getting me here. And the housekeeper, Mrs. Mulgrave. Oscar directs my attention to the tall, skeletal-looking figure dressed in an ankle-length black skirt and matching blouse. She's been at Rockford for more than 20 years now. You probably remember her from before? My smile freezes on my face. Yes, of course. I remember. She's changed too, but the difference is far more chilling than what I see in Oscar. Maybe it's because I was so hopelessly intimidated by her as a child. Maybe my past feelings are coloring my present view, but as I look at Mrs. Mulgrave now, my blood turns cold. She makes me think of a living corpse, with her skin and bones frame and the deadened look in her eyes. What happened to her? She was always a stern, humorless character when I was a child, but I don't remember ever seeing her like this, like someone only half present among the living. Good afternoon, Your Grace. Mrs. Mulgrave lowers into a slight bow, her mouth setting in a thin line that just barely resembles a smile. She holds out her hand, and it feels cold and limp in mine. Good afternoon, I echo. Mrs. Mulgrave will help you manage the day-to-day affairs of the house, and she is indispensable when it comes to planning parties and hosting visitors, Oscar said. I glance at Mrs. Mulgrave uncertainly. I can't picture her in any sort of festive scenario. She also manages the household accounts and will review them with you weekly, he continues. I force a smile in her direction. Great. And now Mrs. Findlay, our esteemed cook. Oscar nods to the stout 50-something woman with graying blonde hair. It's an honor to serve you, Your Grace, she says in an Irish accent, dropping into a curtsy and giving me a kind smile. Oh, I remember you well, Mrs. Findlay, especially... I stop mid-sentence, not wanting to recall her treacle tart or any of the other treats she used to make for me and Lucia before everything changed. Mrs. Findlay prepares a full breakfast, dinner, and afternoon tea every day, plus lunch on the weekends, Oscar says, filling the awkward pause. Whenever you host guests or parties, she'll create the menus with you. Just then, I notice Mrs. Mulgrave giving the younger woman beside her a slight push in my direction. This is my daughter. She will be your maid. Maisie? I can't help blurting out in astonishment. I hardly recognize her. The past 7 years have transformed Maisie from a plain preteen into a beautiful young adult. I didn't expect her to be so pretty. She wears a black tee with black pants, but the simple clothing and lack of makeup only enhance her looks. She has heavy-lidded, deep brown eyes, clear skin with a hint of a tan, the kind of plush pink lips that housewives in my New York hometown would pay good money for, and long brown hair highlighted with strands of gold. Her only adornments are a thick wristwatch and a rectangular pendant hanging on a chain around her neck. I feel a pang of sympathy as I look from mother to daughter. If Maisie's luck had been different, if she'd been born to parents like mine, she could have had the world at her feet, instead of being shut up in a house working as a maid. Maisie, it's really nice to see you again. I have a feeling we'll be good friends, I say warmly. A peculiar expression crosses her face, a vaguely familiar look I feel I've seen before. Though she's still smiling, her eyes cloud over, and I wonder if I said something wrong. Did I come across as patronizing? Or maybe she remembered the last time I visited, and the way Lucia and I ignored her. Maybe she never liked me to begin with. But I don't have time to analyze her reaction any further, as Oscar continues the round of introductions. I meet Mrs. Findlay's kitchen assistant, Katie, and 2 other housemaids, Betsy and Elena, who are tasked with the upkeep of the public rooms open to tour groups and guests. And then I come face to face with someone I remember all too well. Max, I say, my throat dry. He smiles gruffly, and I am momentarily transported to that day in the Shadow Garden 7 years ago, when he handed me the seeds that sprouted at my touch. I wonder if he ever thinks about that afternoon, or if the memory was lost in the wake of the fire. Your Grace, Max says, taking off his cap as he bows. I'm ever so pleased you're back. Thank you, Max. I'm glad to see you too. Well, Oscar claps his hands together purposefully. I imagine you must be hungry. Mrs. Findlay has prepared a welcome lunch for you if you'd like to eat shortly. Carter will bring your suitcases up to your rooms. I can unpack for you, Maisie offers. Oh, no, thank you, I say hastily. I mean, you don't have to do that. Oscar gives a signal to the staff, which sends them dispersing in different directions. Carter and the second footman, Benjamin, lug my suitcases up the stairs and through the front doors. while Mrs. Mulgrave, Mrs. Finlay, Maisie, and the other maids all walk in steady formation to the back of the house. Alfie hops back into the Aston Martin, Max disappears into the gardens, and soon Oscar and I are the only ones left. "Welcome back to Rockford Manor, Your Grace," Oscar says before opening the front doors. Holy! I bite down on my lip to keep from letting an expletive fly in front of Oscar. I forgot how overwhelming and magnificent the marble hall is. In the years I've been away, the gigantic foyer must have shrunk in my mind, but now I stand dwarfed by the 70-foot-high ceiling, gaping at the stone carvings, classical paintings, towering potted palms, vases bursting with flowers, and white marble sculptures surrounding me. I step back to gaze at the main entrance archway, with King George I's coat of arms carved into the center, framed by imposing Corinthian columns. A balcony lies beneath the arch, and I envision an orchestra, stationed there, playing for guests as they saunter through the marble hall below. I look up and find that even the ceiling is a work of art, covered in its entirety by a painted scene that would have been at home in the Louvre. This place is completely over the top. "There you are. Come along, Imogen, darling." My head snaps up at the sound of Mum's voice. I stumble forward, eyes searching desperately for her, even though I know deep down that she won't be found. My heartbeat picks up speed, the adrenaline of longing flooding my insides, and from out of nowhere, a gust of wind swirls around my body, nearly hurtling me off my feet with its force. "What was that?" I cry out. Oscar hurries to close the windows. "Awfully strange, our English weather. I don't think I've seen a breeze quite like that before." "It's only a breeze, just like he said," I tell myself, taking a deep breath. I didn't do anything. And that is a little taste of what you'll be in for with Imogen at Rockford Manor in Suspicion. Here it is again. And thank you for bearing with my voice.
Your voice sounded perfectly fine, Alexandra. But thank you. We know that you were having a bad sore throat for the past couple of days, and you rested it all day so you could do the reading. And it sounds amazing. And so I think I'm just not going to work today after the hangout and just start on the book.
Sounds
Always
great.
Tomorrow. So we'll just go straight into some questions, and then what we'll do is we'll open up the Q&A session so some of the viewers can ask you questions if they want to, which I'm sure they want to. So we'll start off with when I was reading Timeless, one of the things I thought was, it's not easy to portray strong characters, especially strong female characters in novels, especially in the young adult genre. Women are generally still young girls, and they're still just coming themselves, and add the confusion of teenage hormones to it, and it's a lot to handle. So how do you work around that to create a strong female character?
Well, it's interesting. I think there's been a lot of talk lately about strong female characters, and a lot of people will want to compare negatively Bella Swan from Twilight with Katniss from The Hunger Games. And I used to be that way too a little bit. I used to feel like, oh, Bella is all about the man. She needs to love herself and find a hobby, a passion. And I still feel that way, but I do think that it's okay for girls to embrace their softer and more sensitive sides. I don't think all girls are these, powerful necessarily. I mean, all girls are powerful, but not all of them are necessarily able to, shoot arrows like Katniss. They're not all super athletic, kick-ass in that particular way. They might be kick-ass in other ways. So it is important to me to create strong characters, but I do find that my characters are also very emotional and in touch with their sensitivities, because that's how I am, and so it's kind of easier to write characters that I can really get inside their heads. So to sort of sum up, my thought on it is that yes, women should definitely be shown to the full extent of their capabilities, and we're not just romance characters. It's not just about romance and the color pink and a lot of those kind of girly stereotypes, but at the same time, I do think it is important to be able to embrace the feminine sides, and not every character has to be a Katniss. That's kind of how I feel about it. Because I was always myself. I was always that kind of juxtaposition of very much a girly girl. I love fashion, and I would cry about boys, and all of those things. I wasn't the tomboy who was out there, you know, on the soccer field, and I wasn't necessarily, if I was in a situation like the Hunger Games or Divergent, I don't think that I'd necessarily be the person storming in and taking out all the bad guys. But I am strong in other ways, so I think I like to kind of show all of that in my characters.
So basically, you know, I think that that was a very sorry, I'm trying to find a word, but I mean, I also feel when I read books, I mean, yes, obviously you like to read books where the girls are, you know, kick-ass and bad and, you know, like strong in not just physically, emotionally, but physically as well. But
Yeah.
then that tends to be a stereotype when you talk about strong female characters, that they have to be a certain way. And I
Yes.
like the fact that, you know, you touched on the fact that there's so much more to a woman, to a female, than just being physically and emotionally strong. You can do so much more with a character because we are complicated. We are complicated. People are complicated. And you're absolutely right when you're talking about breaking the stereotype. You can be a girly girl and still be
Yeah.
kick-ass in a completely different way than Katniss. So yeah,
Well, and
and
in Timeless, I mean, both books, but I think, yeah, actually both books, I threw a lot of challenges, both
yeah,
with Michelle, my protagonist in Timeless, and Imogen in Suspicion. Both of them have a lot of tragedy thrown at them,
yeah,
and a lot of challenges, especially with the books dabbling in paranormal. There are certain challenges that on Earth we don't really have to deal with, which is great in real life. But they do express their emotions, they do cry, they do have a lot of sensitive moments, but at the same time, the fact that they keep going and the fact that they keep pushing through, I think that's kind of sometimes just as indicative of strength as necessarily being like fearless.
yeah. And again, that's actually brings me to my next question, which I was going to ask you, but you kind of answered it anyway. I mean, Michelle has had in her short life, she's had so many horrible things happen to her. I mean,
Yeah.
I hope I'm not doing any spoilers here, but you know, losing her mother that way,
Yeah.
it's a shock. The last thing she said to her was, "I'll see you at lunch, honey," you know, and
Yeah.
then to have the police officer come to her while she's waiting for her mom and say,
I
"Look,
know. That was hard
this,"
to write.
I was like, "Oh my God, that's so painful," you know. It's like
Yeah.
then having to leave everything she's ever known and to live with her grandparents who she had never met and
Yeah.
didn't have a great opinion of because of what happened between them and her mom. And
Hmm.
then the whole falling in love with Philip, and I just found the whole time travel thing fascinating, you know, like
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad.
I love reading about time travel. So when I picked up the book, I was like, oh, fabulous, you know. And she was strong enough to say goodbye to Philip, you know, in that sense. And I thought, wow, you know, I don't know if I'd be able to do it. But again, you know, you've had all these horrible things happen to you, but she picked herself up and she moved on because she knew she had to make those decisions at a very young age. I thought she
Hmm.
was a very well balanced character because she wasn't
Thank
perfect, obviously, but I think that's what makes her really relatable because she's not perfect, she's human, and she has all these issues, but she
Yeah.
just goes on. So that was, I mean, my
Oh,
thoughts were like that was really great, you know?
thank you. Well, and I think too, I mean, even though she had, I think what was interesting for me to kind of play with Timeless was that yes, she had really tragic things happen to her, but what's interesting is that if those things hadn't happened, she never would have met Philip, she never would have fallen in love, she never would have reconnected with her grandparents. Now, of course, you know, nothing is more important than parents, so I think at the end of the day, we'd all choose to still, you know, of course,
Yeah,
still have our parents, but the fact that from something so painful came something really
yeah,
beautiful, I think that was sort of important to me to kind of show that in the book.
yeah. And I think you managed it very well. The whole concept of loss and love and life. I thought the book flowed very well, seamlessly, and I mean, it took me an hour and a half to finish it.
Oh my God, that's a record. That's amazing.
I was just like, What happens
That's
next? What
incredible.
happens?
I think the fastest until now that I'd heard was 3 hours. So you are by far the quickest reader of the book.
I didn't have to eat. I mean, I was like, need to eat.
Oh,
Let's finish the book first, and then I really wanted to jump into timekeeper next, and I said, okay, maybe I should do like other stuff first, and then pick up. Yeah, I finished both books in 2 days, so it was
oh my
amazing.
gosh, that's amazing. Thank
And
you.
so I wanted to actually talk to you. I mean, you're a musician, you're a singer-songwriter, and sorry, you're a songwriter, and I've seen that's really obvious in the books. I mean, Michelle is a songwriter, and her songs are great.
Oh,
And what
thank
I was wanted to ask is, you're a musician and a novelist, and you've
you.
written and performed several songs for Timeless. In your opinion, how important is it to have strong female characters, not just in novels, but in pop culture as a whole?
Oh, sorry, I think one of our internets cut out. I didn't hear the end of that question.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry. Okay, I'll just repeat the question. As a musician and a novelist who wrote and performed several songs for Timeless, how
Mhm.
important is it, in your opinion, to have strong female characters, not just in novels, but in pop culture as a whole?
Oh, I think it's super important. I think it's huge because that's what the young girls, our next generation, they're all looking to that. And I remember who my idols were when I was little and who I looked up to. And so I think it's really important. I love that people are talking more about feminism. I think Emma Watson has done something amazing with the UN He for She
Yeah.
campaign. And so I'm just always, there's so many role models that could maybe be a little bit questionable that I'm always excited when I see someone like that, um,
Mm,
or even Beyonce with everything that she's brought to the table as a strong woman and constantly standing up for feminism. So I think that is really important, and I think especially when you're at that sort of impressionable young age. So
oh, that's great. Um, Speaking of Emma Watson, I'm not sure if you saw this tweet that went viral. I think one of her followers had actually tweeted her and said, "My father says I should not be an engineer, should not study to be an engineer because it's a man's job. What should I do?" And Emma Watson's response was, "Be an engineer."
good for
And I thought that
her.
it's just fabulous. I mean, she's really young. I mean, in comparison, she's young, but
Yeah.
she's so mature, and she's pointing out the fact that feminism isn't a bad word, which I think there's that stereotype that we've been as feminists struggling to break. And I'm so glad to see that there's so many male allies coming on board and saying, yeah, we're feminists. What does feminist mean? It just means that we want
Equal rights.
equal rights. Exactly. And it was a bit heartbreaking. I think sometime last year, there was this trending topic called Women Against Feminism.
I know, that was so upsetting. It's so weird to me
Yeah.
because as a
And
woman, why wouldn't you want equal rights? Like, how could you, if you love yourself, how could you
exactly.
not want
And
that?
they were having those little papers and holding it up with the hashtag Women Against Feminism and saying, I don't need feminism because I'm against.
Yeah,
And
that's
this is, again, that was the
don't know what the
stereotype.
word means, I think. I think a lot of it too is I think there's a misunderstanding maybe of what the word means. I think a lot of people maybe think it means something other than equal rights. Like maybe they
It,
think we're saying women are more than men, and it's not that. It's just equal. So
yeah, I mean, I would like to see the same number of women on parliament
yeah,
as men. I would like to see a woman leader of a country not be asked questions like how do you, or even a famous actress work and life with a family. You never actually get that question asked to a man.
that's
And I think Jennifer Garner actually pointed that out when during one of the award seasons, and she said, how come you guys always ask me
right.
how I balance my work and life with my family? My husband also has a family. He also works. Why don't you
I
ask him
know.
that question? So I think it's a thing that's so entrenched in our culture, and that
Yeah,
we don't even stop to think like, oh, that's a man's thing, or I need a man to help me do this. But it's not
yeah,
about oh, are you pro man at all? It's just that, well, look, I can do the same thing. But again,
Yeah.
feminism, it's not a bad word.
No.
And the fact that they tried to ban it, it was supposed to be one of the banned words of 2014, I think. I came out and
Who
I
tried to
think
ban?
it was one of the, I remember reading this article a while back about the banned words that should have been banned in 2014, and one of it was feminism. And
Oh,
the feminists, I think globally, just rose up and went, "What's wrong with you guys? Seriously, what's wrong with you people? You don't do that." And it's a
that's
bit sad. I mean, you work really hard and you can't say anything because then the moment you say, "Oh, well, yeah, I'm a feminist," and they go, "Oh, right, you're one of those."
I
It,
know. I think they're just someone needs to just constantly just remind people of what the word actually means. Because if you're any kind of a good person, how can you be against equal rights? That's
Exactly my point. And it's like fighting a rising tide, you're moving against the tide. But I
my.
feel that every single step is a small victory. So we
Yes,
just keep going.
for
So
sure. And the work that you are all doing is definitely so great and helpful
thank you
towards.
so much. We really just want to get it out there that we don't, I mean, violence against women is not something that should be accepted any longer. It's for the
Yeah.
longest time it's been accepted as, well, that happens. A lot of us come from families where we grow up, or our parents or grandparents have grown up with that mentality,
Hmm.
and we don't want that anymore. We are all
No.
equal. Every single person is equal. So yeah. So I'm just going to come to my next question. We had this conversation earlier. There's been a really big influx of more capable and strong female characters in the industry,
Yes.
from science fiction and fantasy and paranormal to young adult. What
Hmm.
are your thoughts on this? And did this influence you when you created not just Michelle, but also her mother Marion, who had gone through a lot and still remained a really strong figure for Michelle?
Yeah. I love to portray women first and foremost as being really capable and having strong sense of self and identity. And even with my villain, and my villain was actually a woman in
Yeah.
the Timeless series.
Yes.
Um, she was a really powerful, strong character too. So um, sometimes the same traits can be, really good in one character and scary in another. It all depends
Yeah.
on, the human being. Um, but it's definitely just for me, it's important. I don't necessarily think about crafting a strong, powerful character. It's more that when I'm writing people, I want them to be interesting. I want them to be fully formed and three-dimensional. And in general, I think all women are. So it's easy.
That's easy. Thank you for that. Just a few more questions, and then we'll open it up to the Q&A session.
Mhm.
Do you think it's important, and I may be repeating myself here, for influential authors such as yourself, who are read all over the world, to make a conscious effort to include characters who are both male and female in your stories that show readers the importance of respecting women as equal rights, as equals and as human beings?
Yes, I do think it's important. And I have to say, I don't know if I've ever necessarily gone into a book thinking about that consciously. I think it's probably more of a subconscious thing of wanting to make sure that the love stories I write, that the women are treated well, that the guys in my story are really, ultimately at their heart good people.
Yes,
Suspicion, there's definitely my two male characters, the two male leads in Suspicion, are a little bit tormented in certain ways. So you'll have to read to the end of the book. But with both of them, same thing. They make mistakes, but at the end of the day, it was important to me to make sure that there's always that ultimate respect shown.
that's fabulous. Yeah, mentioning Rebecca, I was actually going to talk to you about Rebecca later, but I found it interesting. I mean, usually the the bad guy, the antagonist, is very rarely a young girl,
Yeah,
And you have
that's why
actually
it's fun.
you actually made Rebecca really unlikable. Like really, really, you just hate her. But at the same time, she's actually a very strong character because she's like, this is what I want, and I'm gonna get it. And
Mhm.
obviously, you don't you don't encourage somebody
Yeah.
to go around killing people and like destroying lives and all that. But still, she's like, I want this. I'm gonna get it. I don't care. Um,
Mhm.
that I guess some people who call it a go-getter. I don't know. But
Yeah, in kind of a bad way. And I think Rebecca in the Timeless book, she's also very even though she is the villain, she still has it all ultimately stems from her having been rejected. Like so many
yeah,
people are, everyone gets rejected, but she takes it in the absolute worst way.
exactly.
So even her evilness comes out of like unrequited love. So
Yeah.
there's still
But
some tiny bit of humanity there.
like some people just can't take rejection.
Yeah.
All right. So the next question, in your opinion, how can authors like yourself best support efforts to kick off social change to end violence against women?
I think the best thing that authors can do is to first of all support amazing organizations like yours because I think it's important to get the word out. I know that there's a great Indiegogo campaign happening right now where for everyone that's listening, you can donate and win all sorts of cool prizes, not just from me, but from other amazing authors too. And so I think that's really important to align yourself with causes that you believe in and get the word out. And I also think Twitter has become really great. I've learned so much more about what's going on in the world and about human rights issues and things that I wouldn't necessarily know about when I was just in my bubble of writing and my friends and my life. And so I think that authors being active on Twitter, following what's going on in the world, and also, retweeting, sharing petitions, just kind of doing whatever they can, because it is true. We all have a voice, and some of us have. There are some people that have huge voices, bigger than mine, and there are other people that have smaller. But still, it's like everyone. If you can affect and change even just a couple people, it's amazing.
Yes, every voice counts.
Yes,
And
definitely.
never, yeah. And finally, my last question before we go to the Q&A is, you know, as part of the Pixel project, we realized that you and a lot of authors, you guys have been so incredibly supportive of our campaign, the Read Pixels campaign, as well as our anti-violence against women's work as a whole.
Hmm.
Can I just ask you, why do you support the cause to end violence against women?
Oh my gosh, because I think any kind of violence is the most horrible thing. I mean, I can't even watch the news anymore because it's so awful. That's why I like Twitter because you can read articles. There's something about seeing the images on the news that is just too much, too awful. So I mean, I think it's the worst thing, and I think it's particularly I have a strong affinity for. I feel horrible when I hear about people that are abused, particularly women, children, and animals. Like I rescue, both my dogs are rescues, and there's just something about vulnerability that is just so sad to me when people prey on it. And I know that women are really incredible and strong and powerful, but there's no denying that some like the strength, physical strength of a man, like obviously that can be threatening. And any girl that's ever walked down the street and like had things like whistles and been yelled at, like it's supposed to be flattering, I guess, but it's also kind of scary. And people will like laugh at me sometimes because I'm like afraid to like walk places by myself. But it's true, there's a lot there. There is that threat, and as a man, you don't really know what it's like to be afraid walking down the
Yeah.
street, but girls do. And so I feel like that should definitely that has to end.
Yeah. There's a saying that's been going around that it used to be the worst thing a woman could expect when she said no to a man was him being upset. But now the worst thing a woman can expect is that she could be killed, you know?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that has sort of become the phrase because women are so afraid, a lot of women are so afraid to say no in terms of in not just to a date but just to stand up for themselves. But at the
Mhm.
same time, on the other spectrum, a lot of people don't understand. They actually say, you know, what did you do for him to what did you do for him to beat you, or you
Yeah.
must have said something. And there's a lack of sympathy, which is and empathy, which is alarming, because when you look at animal abuse or children abuse,
Mm.
people rarely go, oh my God, how could you, you know, he's a child, they're innocent. And there's
Yeah.
that mentality that, you know, for a woman, you know, you're an adult. How on earth, why can't you just walk away, you know? But it's a lot more than just the physical abuse. It starts off as mental and emotional abuse, and it gradually breaks you down as a person until you
Yeah.
doubt every single thing about you. So,
Yeah, and
what,
that's why I
yeah.
think too it's important for young adult authors too. I think
Mm-hmm.
something that's great is so many of us write love stories, and I think it's great for younger readers to get to see what like love should look like. And I'm not saying like we know what all love should look like. I mean, there's all different kinds of relationships, but you know that there is that respect and kindness, and you should never be afraid of the person you're with. Like that's the last thing you should ever feel. So, you know, if that can even be any sort of an example, like if people can read our books and say, you know, I want a guy like you know, this person. And again, my newest book, I will say, is a murder mystery, but it's different than you would think. So just keep reading till the twist, because you might wonder certain things. I don't want to give too much away, but
Yeah,
even in
sure.
that book that is a murder mystery, even then, you can
Yeah.
end the book and say, okay, you know, that's someone that I would be okay with my daughter being with, or that I would want to be with. You know, and I think not that we all have to show the most perfect relationship, but I think if
Mm.
you're going to show a relationship that isn't built on love and trust and safety, then it has to be presented as a problem so that the younger readers can see that.
Thank you, Alexandra. That was just fabulous. What I'm going to do is, we've got a couple of questions already. So
Oh,
I'm
great.
going to go. The first question we've got is from Yun Akwak,
Hmm.
who actually asked you a couple, but the first one was, Suspicion and Timeless seem similar in the way that they both feature female characters who are from influential families, but are
Yes.
not a part of that world, who then have to return to that life. What part of this appeals to you?
Yes, it's so funny. I think I have a little bit of that. I like to live vicariously through these different worlds that seem so glamorous and amazing from the outside, but you just kind of know once you actually get inside that it's not what you think.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to explore those. I like these sort of heightened worlds that
Yeah.
someone like myself or anyone, you know, wouldn't necessarily get to peer into unless they were in that sort of very small circle. So I think it's fun for me to explore that. I definitely like writing a heightened reality. And then as far as, that is a really good question, as far as leaving and coming back, Timeless was a little different in that Michelle never experienced her sort of rarefied upbringing, because when she was born, her mom broke away from the wealthy family. So Michelle was actually raised very kind of living paycheck to paycheck sort of a deal. Um, but then she experiences it for the first time when she moves in with her grandparents. With
Mm-hmm.
both those characters of Michelle and Imogen, it was fun for me to do the fish out of water, because even though Imogen had known that sort of lifestyle as a kid, she never expected that she would be a duchess, that she would be, you know, the person in charge. She was always kind of, you know, lower on the list, so she was a little bit more real and relatable, and suddenly she's sort of thrust into this situation.
Mm.
So I think it's kind of like a weird, twisted Cinderella thing that I like to write, and that I just love exploring someone getting to live a certain kind of dream, but there's always like a major catch to it, that it's like, well, wait, you know, normal life is probably a lot better than this because X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, and that part for Michelle especially was very obvious when in her transition, when she asked the housemaid, "Can I help you?"
Oh
in the
yeah,
house. "Can I help you with something?" And the housemaid looked terrified, and her grandparents were like, "You don't ask them. That's your job. You don't ask them." And so
yeah,
it
it's
was
like
a big
criticize.
change. Exactly. So it was a big change for her, who used to do everything like clean up and like you said, live paycheck to paycheck. So that was very obvious. And she goes, "Can I help you?" And the maid goes, "Oh my God, you talk to me and ask to help. I'm doing something wrong."
I know, because nobody would think that that's an insult, but it kind
Yeah.
of is in that certain world.
So next question we've got, it's as a feminist, what would you say to young people who are really hostile to feminism, especially young girls and women who publicly denounce feminism because it's man-hating?
That's a really good question. I think what I would say to them, and I have said this before, I think to people on Twitter, I'm sure I have, is it's not about man hating. I love men, you know. I'm engaged. I love guys, you know. Like, I'm a big romantic. It's not about that. It's the actual definition of feminism is that you just want to be treated equally to men. That women should be paid the same as men for doing the same work. They should be treated the same way. They should have the same rights. That's all it is. So I
Yeah.
think the biggest problem is that the people that are hostile towards it, they don't actually realize that's all it means. And I think if you say that to somebody, I just don't know, like, what's the reply to that? Is the reply going to be, no, I don't think we should have equal rights? Well, why? Like, why wouldn't you think? Like, why wouldn't we? Why shouldn't we have equal rights? That just doesn't make any sense. So I don't know. I definitely think it's more of a misconstrued word sort of situation.
Yeah. So I had a couple of questions here as well. The first one was by Yun Akwak as well. How did you get involved with the Pixel project?
How did I get involved in the Pixel project? Well, I actually was it you guys that invited me, or I can't quite remember how it happened, but, but once I received the email and I looked into the work that you do and I saw the website, I was just so impressed and also believed in everything so much, and it was just like a no-brainer. Like, how can I help? I totally support this 100%.
And we are so, so incredibly happy and grateful that that you
Oh,
are supporting us.
thank
And
you.
my next question is a bit lighter. Who is your book boyfriend right now? There are loads of booktubers chatting about their book boyfriends that range from Jem from Cassandra Clare's A Clockwork Angel
Mhm.
series to Peeta in the Hunger Games.
Oh, my book boyfriend. Oh my gosh. Let me think about this for a second. Um, this is kind of funny. I always liked Ron, the redhead from Harry Potter. Um, not because not I'm not saying the actor, like, and that's so not my type or anything. I just loved his personality and that he was so funny and he brought the lightness. Like, I felt like Harry was always like dark and tortured, understandably, but Ron, I think I had a little bit of a book crush on because he just always made me laugh and he seemed like the fun one.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's anything more recent where I got really into the guy. Um, I love Jessica Brody's Unremembered trilogy. There, she has a great guy Zen in there also. Um,
Okay.
he, he's pretty swoony. So
Ooh.
yeah, I'll say those two for right now. But I'm sure after this I'm gonna like think of a million more
Oh,
and
and
start.
go, oh, I should have also said that one.
I know. I'm sure there's like some amazing guy I'm like not even thinking of right now. But yeah,
Mine, I absolutely adore Rock from JD Robb's In That series.
oh wow, interesting.
He's just with his gorgeous and like not just he's a multi-billionaire. I mean, like he's like what's the fella's name? Christian Grey without all
Oh yeah.
the other stuff, just like
Yeah.
gorgeous, good looking, and
Yeah.
not just that he's the kind of male character like Philip. You know, you want in your life because he respects the fact that the woman he loves does certain things that she has to do, and instead of
Right.
trying to stop her, he has back. He goes, "I want to do this, but I'm coming with you
Yeah.
because I have your back, and because we are married, we're partners in life. So I'm going to
Yeah.
support you, but you have to also let me come with you and do stuff." So,
I
yeah,
love
yeah. I try to tell my husband, "Hey, look, this is what he does."
that.
Doesn't always
That's
work. Because it's like, yeah, okay, you go do your thing. I'm gonna watch my F1 right now. So
oh,
yeah,
that's
last question we've got for the day, but I have a couple more questions if your throat's okay. How's your throat?
Oh yeah, I'm good.
All right, okay. So it's just a small thing. I was when reading Timeless, I thought about how Marion turned her back on her family, and she was really young, 18 if I'm not mistaken,
Mhm.
when her husband, when Henry disappeared,
Mhm.
and she was pregnant with Michelle, and she
Mhm.
basically had nothing, and she came from this really rich family. She didn't have to lift a finger to do anything,
Yeah.
but she made the conscious decision, knowing it was going to be really difficult for her and her daughter and her child, but she made that decision that she didn't want anything to do with the Windsor family or the Windsor fortune, moved
Right.
away, and somehow struggled to, to not just have a child and build a life, but to also be a friend. Because like Michelle said, her mother had been her best friend.
Yes. Yes.
So how did, for you, how important was it to portray Marion in that light? You know, she gave up a lot. She was really young. It would have been so easy for her to just go back to her family and be taken care of. But she didn't want that for herself, nor did
Yeah.
she want that for her daughter. So how
Well, and
important
I
was
think
it?
it was it. I I think it was important to me that Marion took that stand. I don't necessarily agree with what she did at all. I
Mhm.
think she was very stubborn and should have, listened more to her parents' side of the story. But I thought it was important that she take such a strong stand because it was proof of how much she loved Michelle's dad. That when she
Mm.
felt like he was taken from her because of her parents, that was just unforgivable. And it just
Mm.
showed that for her, it wasn't about having the fancy family backing and the financial support. She would rather be a waitress and a single mom, but just have that pride of, I'm not with the people that took my love away from me. And again, like you'll find out more to anyone that's listening to this that hasn't read Timekeeper. You'll find out a little bit more about the parents. The grandparents aren't complete villains. But it was just important to me to portray her in that light because I felt like so much of the crux of this whole series is that amazing love between Michelle's parents. So we had to see how much it mattered to Marion.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Alexandra. That actually wraps up today's session. As we mentioned earlier, Alexandra has generously donated two Timeless Readers packs which comprises of her critically acclaimed Timeless duology, which comprises of one personalized copy of Timeless, which is a paperback edition, and one personalized copy of Timekeeper, which is the hardcover first edition. So, if like me, you love time travel, then you really need to get these. She's also donated two signed first edition hardcover copies of her latest book, Suspicion, and a one-to-one Skype chat with one lucky fan of book club. So just head on over to our Indiegogo, our Read Pixels page on Indiegogo or Razoo. I'm just going to share the screen slide right now for you to see. So yeah, you can donate for geeky goodies in Indiegogo at http // is.gd /r4p Indiegogo IWD. For PayPal donors, you can go to http is.gd /r4p IWD, and of course you can find out more about our Read for Pixels campaign about the authors at http is.gd read 4 pixels, and that's number 4, not the word 4. And am I back on? Yes, I am. Sorry. Yes, and if you want to learn more about what the Pixel Project does as well, you can just head on to www.thepixelproject.net, and you can also find out more about the Celebrity Male Role Model Pixel Reveal campaign, which is up at http://reveal.thepixelproject.net to learn more about it. And please do donate generously to help us reveal Pixels and raise $1 million to the cause. Every dollar counts. So even if you can't afford to put $100, even $1 will take us up to where we need to go. And Alexandra, is there anything else you'd like to say, like to add?
Just follow me on Twitter at TimelessAlex. I'd love to chat with all of you. I would love to hear your thoughts on Timeless, Timekeeper, and Suspicion, and definitely support the Pixel Project. They're amazing, and there are plenty of other prizes in addition to me. In addition to books and gifts from me, there's also amazing prizes from people like Charlene Harris and Marie Lu, and just some really amazing authors. So you're in for a treat.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. We really, again, we're so grateful that you've donated your time, and also you've donated such great perks. And just a little note, if you are planning to purchase, to donate or to get your perks, the goodies, just please note that most of it is only for US-based donors. So when you do go to get your goodies, just double check to make sure that you can get it. And yeah, that we're wrapping up for the day. Again, thank you very much for your time, Alexandra, and to all of you who sat with us and just given us questions. Really appreciate your time and your support to the cause. And we hope you have a good day or good night wherever you
Yes, have a
are in
great
the world.
Saturday night.
Thank you. All right.